Well, welcome in, friends, to Rates and Barrels. I'm Chris Welsh. That is Eno Saris. We are in the final throes of the season. It's playoff time. There's only a couple more weeks. Only so many things that we can talk about, my friend, but we've got plenty of them, like unfortunate injuries, a lot of pitching notes. We're just going to set the whole groundwork for you for this week on the fantasy baseball side and the baseball side, and also remind you guys can pick up a subscription to The Athletic for like $1 a month. Go to theathletic.com/rates and barrels where you can get all the amazing content. Eno's got some awesome stuff that I've been privy to that's coming up here in the very near future.
Yeah, excited for a Corbin Carroll piece, and the mailbags were kind of fun. It's a little bit more like a Q&A where I get to dig into it. So last week I tried to fix the Cardinals. I gave them Shota Imanaga and Sonny Gray.
Oh, really? I would be interested that they could pay for a Monica, but
well, they probably have like 35 to 40 million coming off the books that they could use. There's a better way to use $18 million a year than they used on Adam Wainwright this year. So, there's ways that they can take existing budget. Somebody gave me fairly backhanded praise saying that you rarely saw this much insight into the way that DeWitt works his teams than to suggest that the Cardinals should sign the third best Japanese pitcher and a over 30 guy with a curveball. I was like, well, they don't usually shop at the top of the market, so I just can't see them, buying Blake Snell for 150, 170 million or whatever it's going to take to get Blake Snell after he wins the Cy Young and goes on the market. So, I tried to get them two starting pitchers that could pitch near the top of a rotation for under $40 million, and that's what I came up with.
You're like, gee, thanks for the backhanded compliment.
Yeah, right. I figured out the wit ball.
The Corbin Carroll piece, obviously, I'm excited about as a Corbin Carroll fan. If anybody watch on the video, they can see I've got the Corbin Carroll jersey behind me, so that should be great. Probably you don't want to give anything away, but it should be a pretty fun piece on Corbin Carroll. You got to speak to Corbin Carroll. That's actually the really cool part.
Well, I mean, the thing that it was born out of, and people might remember that crazy, silly game between the Diamondbacks and the Braves that was like 20-18 or 18-16, and it was just a slugfest back and forth and back and forth. It wasn't even just terrible pitching. I mean, I think it was just great hitting. And Acuna was going nuts. And it was a little bit like when we saw Acuna go against Mookie Betts in LA. There's a certain sense that like Acuna is the MVP favorite and people are coming for him, and there's a certain sense of, even if you're talking about team matchups, there are these singular matchups in baseball sometimes where I don't know if it's just narrative, but like me watching it, I was like, this is a little bit Mookie Betts versus Ronald Acuna Jr. right now. And they're both trying to hit homers to win this game. That happened in that series. And when I saw Corbin Carroll against Acuna, like, I was like, these two players think they're the best players in this game right now. And every time they come up, they want to win the game. And it was in that slugfest, it was just immediately apparent to me that I think it's like trying to describe the je ne sais quoi of like the stars. Like there's something that Carroll has. He has that something that stars have, and you can see it sometimes in a sitting. It's not every game. I'm sure there are games where Corbin Carroll goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts, and if you watch that game, you didn't get all that off of it. But I feel like you can get them in certain games where you're just like, this is a guy who wants to be a superstar and actually has the tools, and like, so there's something there that I'm trying to figure out exactly how to write it right now. But just talking to people around him, and he's just a really interesting guy.
Yeah, and then you're going to be uncovering that. I'd actually liken it similar to the big quarterback duels you have, like where Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen, and they're going back and forth. It feels very much like the two guys team on their back type of thing, but put into baseball.
It's harder because in baseball, like you have a whole lineup, 9-10 guys,
Yeah.
So and in baseball, you can't give the star the ball more often. You can't figure out a way other than putting Acuna number 1 in the lineup. you can't find a way to get him more plate appearances. You can't be like LeBron where you've given the ball every time. You know what I mean? It can't be like, so there's stuff that baseball goes against that. But then despite that, I think there are times where you're watching a game and like, I know there's a lot of other people in this game right now, but right now this is Acuna versus Betts. Since how I'm feeling it,
I think it's special when that can be identified. So be on the lookout for that coming here in the near future over on The Athletic. Just one of the many reasons to make sure you've got a subscription and that you are subscribed to the podcast. We are down to the final throws as well of kind of the regular season here at Rates and Barrels. So it is me and Eno today, and then it's you and Al coming up later in the week, and it's going to be like that for the next couple weeks. So make sure you guys stay subscribed so you are notified of all the latest. Let's get into one of the biggest stories that happened over the weekend. We have been talking so excitingly about one of the game's biggest prospects coming up in Jasson Dominguez, and now we are saying goodbye because Jasson Dominguez suffered a torn UCL in his right elbow that is going to require surgery, and it's going to go to Tommy John. Here's my question, though, because I found this interesting. The general consensus on a hitter when they suffer this injury and they have Tommy John has been like a 6-month time period where they could theoretically kind of get back into it. So what that would do, if that were the case, is that would put Jasson Dominguez probably in line to come back during spring training, probably be good for the season for the most part. There's always the foreseeable like month or something like that. But according to Aaron Boone, the recovery time is looking closer to 9 to 10 months, which would be way more significant to the year. So any thoughts on this injury as far as Tommy John for a hitter goes and your expectation of recovery time? Because I feel like those don't quite match up. I feel like 6 has always been, at least maybe it's when they can start ramping stuff up. So maybe they feel there's going to be a couple months needed of like really ramping up and then rehab assignments and spring training missed and blah, blah, blah. But what do you think about that recovery time for Jasson Dominguez?
Well, let's see here. We have, I think, in Bryce Harper, a very sort of best case scenario. Also, just really easy lineup wise to take Bryce Harper and put him in a DH, whereas I'm not sure that the Yankees lineup can handle that. Like
get Stanton out there every day in the outfield.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they necessarily want that. So that may be part of what they're baking into that. I also was just thinking that Trevor Story, let's see here. He had it January 10th or 9th, and
that was longer.
Well, he came back about 30 games ago, so about a month ago, 27 games ago. So he came back in late
August,
mid-August. So mid-June, mid-January to
about 7 months.
Yeah, that's a little more than the 6 that people say.
Yeah, so it's about 7-month recovery time, a little bit harder. And what was Harper's again? Harper's was like, wasn't it like? I mean, the expectation was he was going to come back like 2 or 3 months after. I want to say his was like 5 months. Does that sound right?
Harper undergoes. So he did November. He had it basically right after the season because he knew
so
he
his
needed
is still
to.
like 6.
So yeah, and when he come back, he came back in like April or May.
I think he came back in May. So yeah, it's
but
about
again,
6-ish.
Remember, when he came back, they said he couldn't throw, so he had to be the DH. He didn't even start playing first base till a couple months later. So maybe part of the problem is that they're just like, yeah, it could maybe be 7 months, but then if I tell you 7 months now, then 7 months from now, you're going to start bugging me about Jasson Dominguez when I don't necessarily have a place I can put him if he can't throw. So we're just going to call it 9 to 10 months so that you don't bug us until after the All-Star break next year.
Well, the one thing is, if I didn't see if he had the surgery yet. I don't think he did. But if you're doing the math, you've got October, November, December, January, February, March. There's 6 months. April, the first season is 7. So on a quick recovery, maybe he's back by May 1st. If they're giving him that full.
But again, he might not be able to throw May 1st. He might not be able to throw until July 1st, but he might be able to hit May 1st. So maybe you can activate him for a long rehab. You don't even need, you could activate him, an option to him, you know.
But you just probably don't also with a 20, 21-year-old kid. You want to have like a full recovery. You don't want to set that apart. But and it just puts a big wrinkle into the production. I think I had been saying on here, like
I would have said make him your opening day center fielder otherwise, right?
100%. Well, I was saying, I think there's an argument that he was going to be a top 100 pick next year with how he's performed and being, you know, hitting 3, maybe hitting in a prominent part of the lineup for the Yankees.
Stash. Now he's like a prospect stash. He goes back to being a prospect stash.
Well, kind of what we talked about with the only benefit is you get the IL. So you could take him at the back end of your draft. You can stash him on the IL if you do. Exactly. Yeah. It makes it more difficult for like an NFBC league. You're not going to want to take him when you don't have some injury roster spot, maybe like a big old giant, like 50, you know, draft and hold, but in some of those platforms are just not going to work. So
even bottom line is to treat him as someone that you don't know how much you're going to get from. And that always makes it hard on draft day to really invest.
And really what it does is it just makes him not really an option for next season. That's what's going on. Like when he gets closer and we get a better idea, spring training.
He can be in a Fabopalooza at some point.
Yeah, he could join Fab. But you know what? February to March, we'll find out some information. They'll be like, oh, he's a superhuman. He is a Martian. He's ahead of schedule. Or yeah, he is lined up to this and we can make better decisions. From, you know, a dynasty standpoint, you're good. From a keeper standpoint, the really biggest change is that if you had like, let's say a smaller 8 keeper league, Dominguez went from like, yeah, you got to keep him to no, you just probably don't at this point, unless you've got big ILs. The Yankees
or you're rebuilding. If you're in rebuilding, you could just do it.
I think it's a great opportunity if, to your point, if you're in a rebuild and someone else is highly competitive into next year trying to buy Jasson Dominguez, I would buy him right now because now that he won't produce, I think rebuilding teams can get him for cheaper. So I love that idea. As far as people this year, you can safely cut the replacement Estevan Florial. It's like that. You ever seen that Grand Theft meme where they're like, here we go again? Like I think just walking down the street. Like that's how I feel about Estevan Florial, who is, I mean, he made his major league debut in 2020 and he has just touched a little bit every single year. He's had his best minor league season, 28 homers, 25 stolen bases, but he's had about a 30% K rate at AAA, hit 284. I don't have I think he's an insane athlete, but the big strikeout rate doesn't make me feel better. Any excitement for you for Estevan Florial?
No, that strikeout rate is pretty aggressive. And it also reminds me a little bit about age at level, because at this point, especially given the progression that he's taken, the fact that this is his 3rd time at AAA, like you can put age at level stuff on back burner for certain types of players, I think. But this, I don't think you necessarily do that for him. Like he's 25 at AAA for a reason. It's not COVID. It's not injury. You know, it's because of his play. It's because of the strikeout rate. So when you look at the fact that he's 25 and at AAA and he has a 129 WRC plus, I in fact think that that's much closer to average than it first appears.
I completely agree. Like I would be looking for significant. Yeah, I'd be looking for significant changes to him. And I'm talking like he's been a 30% K guy just forever. I'd be looking for that to be down at like 23%. I could be like, oh, you know, that's kind of positive. That's something we can build off of, but it's not. He has had a lowered ground ball rate. It's the lowest since AA in 2021. And really, he's only had a sub 40% ground ball rate. I mean, we're talking like 15 different instances of minor league and majors. This is the 4th time he's had the lowest ground ball rate. So maybe that's a little bit encouraging, and it's a higher line drive rate, but it's still a huge strikeout problem. I'm not. There are replacements we'll talk about as we were giveth Jasson and taketh away. We are given a top prospect, which we'll talk about in a second.
We are, also talking about a guy that hits the ball hard, but hasn't hit the ball hard like Ellie De La Cruz or O'Neill Cruz or Giancarlo Stanton, where you can sometimes say, oh, well, he strikes out 30% of the time, but he hits 120 mile an hour, piss missiles every other day. And so he's going to run like a 350 BABIP. There's some evidence he could run a high BABIP. But I don't think that the batted ball quality is so good that he's going to hit his way past, 220 or something. There's a chance, though. I mean, ATC has given him a 383 projected BABIP, which seems insane. But if he can manage that, and he has managed that basically at AAA the last two tries, then he can have a 245 batting average. But I think you're much more likely to get something in the 220s along with power and speed.
I think you're much better off getting really any of your production anywhere else. So Florial is not someone I'm.
Wow.
Well, I'm just like,
yeah.
if you're in like super deep league, like, okay, but I would rather like Rafaela. I would rather Parker Meta. I mean, like every prospect that's been called up, I would rather him. Who knows? Florial's got the physical skills that he could go off and rattle off like, a triple, 2 stolen bases and a home. I mean, I wouldn't discount it, but it's just like, he's going to strike out a whole bunch. He might have like 2 good games. We're playoff time. I'm looking for more constants than I am like dart throws. Also, just sticking with the Yankees here for a second, wanted to point out as well, Yankees, Luis Severino officially out for the season with a strained left oblique. Replacing him was Johnny Brito. They brought up a reliever, but there are questions, I guess, to the relief. So what do you think they're going to do with the rotation now that Severino is out?
Well, I hope that they add Randy Vasquez to it. I kind of like Vasquez a little bit. He's got something more than his current strikeout and swing strike rate suggest, I think. And I get a little bit of who's that lefty in the Phillies? Ranger Suarez vibes a little bit. So that's not, I'm not saying he's amazing, but I'm saying he could be usable, streamable in the right matchups. Interesting guy. My other reasoning for Randy Vasquez maybe being important is that Michael King is stretching out, and he's been great, and I love him, but 83 innings would be, I think, a high since he had 149 in 2017, which is a long time ago. So I would expect them to slow down on him or at least need a caddy to go along with him. I can't imagine that they're just going to pitch Michael King 5 innings every 5 times out the rest of the way. And so if you do that and you are the Yankees, then and then there's also Brito, like, how long is Brito going to go into each game? So I think Vasquez is someone worth mentioning, even if Brito is the guy that takes the job.
You going to fall into Severino next season at all?
I think I will. If I love, especially, I think there's some information that we can get between now and then that would be useful, like where he goes. I mean, especially if he goes to a place that has some, history with reclamation guys. Like if he went to San Francisco, or if he went to San Francisco, or if he went to LA.
Tampa.
Yeah, Tampa. I would like all those because, Tampa and San Francisco, at least he has the nice park, behind him. And then all 3 of those teams have somewhat of a reputation for being able to help people. So, if he did end up in one of those places, he jumps up my board a little bit. He's already not someone that I'm going to knock completely off my board. No way. The velo is not that far off this year, and he's not that far removed from being a good pitcher. But we are still, I think right now I'm talking about a bench pick.
Someone deeper.
Yeah. Okay. Bench pick, but somebody that I would be excited to, like maybe if he was in the AL, like a AL only $3 to $5 pitcher, like still someone that I think of as more than a $1 guy, someone that I might actually think about when I'm putting together a plan.
I think you said it best, like paying attention to where he goes, if it's a money grab or if it's more of a reclamation, if you get the right team, like you said, Mariners, Giant. Like when I look at like Giants and Tampa Bay,
he might be a Giant. Like that seems like a total Giant thing to do.
Yeah, those definitely sound good. In a mini project prospect, not so many we're throwing in here, we're talking about Jasson Dominguez. So getting at the Yankee news out of the way, the replacement that you could have is a guy that I thought should have been up way sooner. I can't get over, by the way, how two teams fighting aggressively for the playoffs did not call up their top prospects, and then they did when they're not eligible now. The Diamondbacks brought up Jordan Lawler, which we'll talk about in a second, but Pete Crow Armstrong, I believe this morning, the news broke, or maybe it was late yesterday, that Pete Crow Armstrong is officially being called up by the Chicago Cubs. Neither player will be eligible for the playoffs, but they can get some run out of him. Pete Crow had a phenomenal year. He started in Double-A, 14 homers, 27 stolen bases, a 289 batting average with a 238 ISO. He then goes to Triple-A. Problem was his strikeout rate did increase just under 30%, but he hit 271 with another 6 homers, 10 stolen bases. That is almost a 20-40 season in barely over 100 games played in the minors, which I thought was really impressive. AAA, he saw an increase in his ground ball percentage, but still trying to get the ball in the air. He's also seen a slight decrease kind of across the board over the last year and a half of way he's pulling it. But this is one of those guys that can spread it to all fields. I think he's one of those classic 5-tool, number 3 type of hitters. I love Pete Crow Armstrong, but want to get your take on seeing him we're going to get this little 3-week window that if I lost Jasson, 100% would I jump up on Pete Crow, because I think he is a 12-team 5 outfielder pickup for sure.
Yeah, he's got the power and the speed. He's got a track record of striking out less than he struck out this year. I mean, the things that I'll be watching for how much I want to invest in him next year will be how much he swings and misses, swing strike rate. I'll definitely be tracking that. I'd like to see what his max EV is. He only got a 107 this year in AAA, and he is. I know these are older numbers that they were that we're working off here, but the Fangraphs gave him a 35 to 45 game power and 50 to 55 raw power. So I'm not saying that power is a question. I think the question is how much power, and I'd like to have some sense of how much power I think he's going to have. So whether it's barrel rate or max EV, depends a little bit on how much sample we get out of him. But I will be tracking his batted ball quality and then his swings and misses. Those are the two things that I think will determine the extent of his ceiling going forward. A little bit more than like his just like raw homers and stolen base totals in the minors, I think.
But do you think you have a good grasp of what that ceiling is in the 3-week sample at the end of the year compared to whatever adjustments can be made, with like a major league off season?
If you look at a swing strike rate, they've been traditionally high in the minors, and swing strike rate is something that stabilizes really quickly. So he's going to see, over these 3 weeks, hundreds of pitches, So when you get to hundreds of pitches, you can say something about swing strike rate. Barrel rate will be touch and go, because barrel rate is usually about a month you want, and 50 balls in play. So I kind of doubt he gets to 50 balls in play. And so I will have to do some guessing based on how much he lifts the ball in the major leagues. That's been up and down for him. He's had, ground ball rates of 45% and fly ball rates of 55% at different stops. So, I kind of want to see for Pete Crow Armstrong, like, something about, his ground ball, fly ball mix, maybe his hard hit rate and his max EV more than necessarily his barrel rate, because it won't quite be enough sample for the barrel rate.
Who'd you rather have? We also saw the call up over the weekend of Evan Carter. Evan Carter really done much, hitting 200, got striking out a whole bunch. He's also walking a bit. He did get his first stolen base. I believe he has 1 hit in his first 5, but he's walked twice. So Evan Carter, the only reason I bring it up too is like these guys they share similarities as far as like rank perspective goes. I think both might have power,
a little
questions.
Bit of pop up on the power aspect.
Yeah. Who would you rather invest in rest of season? Like, you lost Jasson, you lost somebody else, whatever. You have to pick one, Evan Carter or Pete Crow. And it's not fair because you haven't seen Pete Crow yet, and you've seen a tiny bit of Carter. But who would be your pick?
What's this game log look like for Evan Carter? Has he been playing every day since he came in? Yes.
Yeah.
And batting 9th, 3rd. Against somebody in Oakland, and then 9th again. Actually, on that game where it says he's batted 3rd, he didn't bat, so it must have been a pinch hitter situation. So he's
Okay.
played.
Yeah, you're right, because he only has 8 plate appearances, and that he didn't acquire any when he probably was just a defensive replacement or
Yeah.
a pinch runner or something like that.
So I'm guessing that game, I can click on it, was started by a lefty, Sean Newcomb. Yep. All right, so he's sitting against lefties, maybe. Both of these teams are trying to win, so they're just going to use these players the best they can, which might mean platooning for Pico Armstrong. Was there a corresponding move? Who do you think he's playing over? Unless they just move. Oh, Candelario is hurt.
Well, you've got
day-to-day.
Bellinger, you've got Suzuki, and you've got Happ. You move one of those guys into a DH spot, and then I think that's what you can end up doing, and then you can get Pete Crow time in the outfield, because you're not going to.
Bellinger plays first, then basically in this
Yeah,
situation.
sure. You can move Bellinger to first. Yeah, I
Candelario
didn't.
to third. Morel becomes utility, and Morel takes Pete Armstrong's at bats against lefties.
That sounds about right. I mean, it's similar to
Morel backs up Candelario when his back hurts.
Okay, so you go under some presumption that maybe both of these guys are in some form of a split,
playing 2/3 of the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, the what could be with Pete Crow versus what you're starting to see with Evan Carter. I feel like the answer for me is Pete Crow, but
Armstrong. Yeah, I think it's
okay.
Crow Armstrong. Just because the questions for Carter on the power end are a little bit louder, and he hasn't quite answered them this year. Whereas, Carter's Crow Armstrong's in the middle of answering those questions about power. You know what I mean? Evan Carter had a 1.67 ISO in Double-A this year. That's not for a guy who's also fast and who has a frame like he does. He's very skinny.
Yeah, and also looking here, this looks like the Tennessee numbers here. I don't know why I don't have the Iowa numbers, but in Double-A, Pete Crow hit 306 against righties, 247 against lefties. So he's not completely unusable against lefties so far this year. And that's not always the case with some of these guys. So I think the power potential is bigger with Pete Crow. I think he's as much of a stolen base option as Evan Carter. Evan Carter, the Texas has just been kind of trending down, and maybe it's a little bit of the newest, shiniest toy that lives out there. But I've also been screaming about Pete Crow for weeks and weeks, and this is the guy to really get excited about. It was Pete Crow and Jasson Dominguez, and you lose Jasson for Pete Crow. Why not? I guess I'm dismissive of Estevan Florio because he's not a good player. He's not a great player. He's a good AAA player. He's not a good major league player. Pete Crow has been a great, really solid to great minor leaguer that's going to get an opportunity and hopefully maybe hit a little bit higher in the batting order as well. And the Cubs are in the thick of it. Rangers really don't seem to be. So I'm kind of a Pete Armstrong guy.
We got we got a couple things right last week on rates and barrels. In the early part of the week, we said that Jordan Lawler was going to come up soon, and you were right about that. And then on Friday, we did a long discussion of Evan Carter in anticipation of him coming up. So both those guys came up. I think Lawler and Carter, to some extent, show you like when you're in redrafts that it can sometimes be folly to reach for these prospects. Now, I'm not saying that Lawler is not good long term. I'm just saying these are the first 12 plate appearances of his life in the major leagues. And it's not maybe too surprising that he's struggling to make contact and hasn't hit a ball over 80 yet.
He doesn't look good right now.
He doesn't look good. But
cool that I was right. Hey, super happy for me. I'm like, hey, look at me. I was right. He stinks right now. They said he's going to 100% play against lefties. They also are messing around with potential third base when righties are in there. I think Lavelle is the type of guy that is going to want to build confidence and is not going to throw him out into the wolves every single day, but he ain't doing anything. He has one hit through 11 total at bats. He's striking out more 50% of the time. I mean, it is not a good look. So hopefully the turnaround happens soon. And luckily he has a great teammate in Corbin Carroll, who those guys are very good friends that can hopefully kind of ramp him up. But from a fantasy perspective, like it's the playoffs. Like there's no reason to hold or anything like that, but it's more of a next.
That's what I was going to say. Like you can move on probably. And we were saying that, a lot of times the best way to do this is to give them that week or maybe even a week on the bench where you replace the guy on your bench with Jordan Lawler, watch him on the bench for a week, and then his manager starts talking about he'll play against righties. Was it righties or lefties?
He'll play 100% of games
lefties.
versus lefties.
See, that I don't want to hear that. As soon as I hear that, I'm like, oh, so he's mostly playing against lefties and then he's going to sneak in against righties. That's not good. That's we're talking about 33% playing time or 40% playing time.
I will tell you, the Diamondbacks this week, they have 7 games. 3 are projected versus lefties, 4 against righties. They're playing every single day, and they are.
Yeah, but you're still talking about like 4 starts for Lawler, maybe.
Yeah, but you are right about that. But they've got the Mets for 4 games, and then they're in Chicago, or no, then they're in Arizona against the Cubs again. The 2 biggest question marks is you've got Senga and Steele in there, and then you do have Hendricks again. So there might be some tough matchups.
And sometimes you're like, oh, he's playing against lefties. Well, some of the best pitchers in this league are lefties. So yay, he gets Steele. How excited am I that he got to play? He gets in there against Steele. So I think, let me just check this most added list here for some other middle infielders that I might like now that I feel like I've made it. So Royce Lewis is in a most added spot. Davis Schneider, is in the most added MI slot situation.
I'm trying to look for middle infielders that are less owned because there's a lot. I mean, back to the Ronnie Mauricio thing. Ronnie Mauricio is getting playing time. He's under 50% owned according to CBS's platform.
And he's on a bad team, so he might play every day. And so
he is, I think. So
if I'd rather him right now to just capture the next lightning bit, like I might just pick up Mauricio for Lawler,
Yeah, I think you can kind of move on from. I'd love for the idea to be able to put him on the bench, but also like, what are we doing it for? There's a week or 2 weeks left in your fantasy playoffs. Yeah. If Davis Schneider's out there, you drop Lawler in a heartbeat for Schneider, but it'll be a bigger look to next year because Lawler looks like he will have the. I mean, I think all these guys, Evan Carter, Lawler, Pete Armstrong, these are all guys that are viable to break camp as starters with their teams, and these will all be the top rookies we're looking at. Jason's now off the table for the most part, so these are the players. So these next 2 or 3 weeks are probably really important to what type of early investment we're going to want to have, and then pair it against whatever spring training adjustments happen.
There's another shortstop that just came back up into the big leagues. Zach Neto is back with the Diamondbacks, and I would think that of the Angels. I'm sorry. I would think that Zach Neto, Jeremy Pena, and Jordan Lawler are all going to be kind of interesting back end shortstops. Deeper leagues, interesting keeper acquisitions in the offseason. If you think about it, all 3 of them have taken a hit in terms of, maybe what people think of their upside or how good they are. And all 3 of them, I think, become attainable. With every bad plate appearance Jordan Lawler has, he becomes more attainable. So all 3 of them are maybe attainable this offseason. All 3 of them will be interesting late drafts. And in fact, Neto might be the one that especially when we start looking at price, if Lawler costs more than Neto might be my favorite of the 3. One thing I really like about him is that he just hasn't struck out that much. I think more walks will come in the future. Also, a 10% barrel rate is pretty decent. A 109.9 max EV. Like, he has a little bit more power than I think some people give him credit for. And if he's going to strike out 20% of the time and barrel 10% of the time, I think that he has better batting average potential than people are giving him. He's got a 241, Neto does, and he's projected for like 250. If he strikes out 21% of the time and barrels 10% of the time, why can't he hit like 260, 270? So I see some potential here. And of those names that I've mentioned, I may like Neto next year. It'll depend on Lawler's cost. It'll depend on what he does in the next couple of weeks. But I think Neto's shown enough to be like a back end 12 team shortstop.
Will
Definitely
you
back
like
end 15 team.
Will you like Neto on an Angels team that has no Ohtani or Trout? Or
Oh,
Trout? Because there's rumors out there about Trout might request a trade and the Angels would acquiesce if he
that's
does
true. And I
request it.
always fall for these players on bad teams where I'm
And
like,
that, yeah,
what
Neto,
could go wrong? And
now
then you're like,
Neto's the
oh, why am I
number.
down in runs and RBIs?
Now he's the 3 hitter, but it's for a team that has Noah Chanel, and that's it. And they have
Yeah, and
no
he
other
like
players.
finishes the year with like 60 runs and
Yeah,
65
70
RBI. And you're like,
runs and 41 RBI with
yeah.
15 homers, and you're like, all right, this is cool.
Thanks
Like
for
I
that. At least it was cheap.
yeah, I got him less than low. I get your point
Yeah.
with that, and I do think I completely agree with your assessment when you're talking about like the barrel rate tells us the hard hit rate's not there, but the barrel rate and a expected batting average that's actually a notch higher than his current batting average. Those are things that are like, oh, you know what? As a hitter, some of this stuff might be sustainable, and if he can add any hard hit balls to the game next year, it might be a bigger push. And maybe this is a player that is like a 15-20 guy, but it's also like you also might have absolutely nobody playing on the team. They might be putting together a team that looks like what the Nationals are.
Yeah,
That might
definitely
maybe he's CJ
safer.
Abrams, but
It's definitely safer as like a cheap mono league guy. But like, another usage for him, draft and holds as your second shortstop. Love that,
yeah,
because what I did a lot of this year was draft and hold. My second shortstop was JP Crawford, a guy who was going to play every day. And worst case scenario, if my other shortstop gets hurt, I'm just putting in a guy who's playing every day.
What a great year he's had too.
Right. And I think Neto could have a similar thing where he's 22. What if he grows in a little bit more? Like you said, hits the ball a little bit harder next year. Yeah, but the runs and RBI will not be good.
Would you yeah. Would you cut Lawler right now for Neto?
Yes.
Because he just got activated.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, but I do think, I mean, no surprise, I'm a homer. But I also think Jordan Lawler is just exceptionally a better player. I think Lawler will be the guy I'm invested in next year, but I also don't want to pay like a 150 if he ends the year with like a 125 batting average and everyone's like, oh, I don't care. And everyone's paying the high price. Like, I think Pete Crow might be one of the priciest of all these guys, but if I get a discount and Lawler's outside the 200s and people don't care about the minor league numbers and they only care about a 3-week sample size, I'll have a lot of shares of Lawler next season in that Diamondbacks lineup. That it's an explosive Diamondbacks lineup that'll let him run, and Lavelle's already put him in some positions to hit higher. So I think that's relatively encouraging. Whatever the hell they want to do with Carroll, God knows if they want him to be a 3 or a leadoff, or they just move him around. 7, they just continuously keep moving.
I'm not writing his epitaph or anything, but yeah, for this year, I'm moving on.
Yeah. There were a couple other comebacks as well. Just want to throw them out to you. Michael Conforto almost back, and we saw Joey Votto and Jonathan India both come back. India, I think, actually had a nice homer stolen base combo game. Joey Votto maybe on the Swan Song. There's some interesting stuff out there about just him, and I saw this article about him wanting to just disappear once he's gone from baseball. But any thoughts on the potential comeback of Conforto? Is he someone to pick up?
Why do all this TikTok, Joey?
Did you believe that? Do you buy that where he's just like, I just want to disappear? Like, when I'm gone, I mean,
he definitely is. He's been a quiet guy for most of his career. It is just the social media recently has been weirder for me because he didn't strike me as that kind of guy, but I thought, well, maybe he's just trying himself out for a media gig.
I was about to say, he seems like he's going to be locked into some like show on MLB Network like next year.
But
he's going to be
need
like paired
to either.
No, he doesn't.
225 million. He made like 250, 260 million dollars over his career. So
maybe he wants to do a travel show and he just wants to travel around and be like Joey Votto in the Maldives. Like, I don't know. I don't know what he's trying to
or
be.
Maybe he's right. He'll just disappear. He does have an interesting personality that I don't necessarily think he'll like. It's a little weird. How many other players have gone on with Chris Russo and like directly sort of attacked him? You know what I mean?
But he also kind of like
he did it as a joke,
yeah,
and he made it a fun thing. But at the same time, like I don't know how super thick-skinned he is, and like being in the media does require that to some extent. That's not my best foot forward, and I hate it.
It's my worst attribute.
Yeah,
my thick skin,
but it is part of the game. So I don't know. But with Votto and Conforto and India, I mean, the Votto India thing is interesting because Matt McClain is still a couple weeks out. may not get much of him this rest of the season because obliques are just super tricky like that. And then Noelvi Marte got hit in the face, and so right now, even the MLB trade rumors write-up I was reading on this move was suggesting that everyone can play until Marte comes back. And then even then, you can push Steer to the outfield. So I have a feeling this will hurt a Reds outfielder somehow. And that's always been my default. But Bader is playing only against lefties. So Bader is in a platoon, I think, with Friedel.
Okay, so then is it Steer or Fraley?
Benson and Renfroe. I guess what I'm saying is it'll be Bader, Friedel in a full platoon, Steer in left, and Renfroe and Benson in a full platoon. So that hurts Renfroe the most.
Can't imagine they're not going to have Renfroe in that lineup though every day. That's my only problem with that one. I think it's good.
I think he's been below league average for the season.
I just wonder. Well, I just also wonder if this is something that just hurts Christian Encarnacion Strand moving forward, where you just don't see any playing time from him. Let him get a break. Sit down, kid. Let Joey Votto take care of work. I don't know. I think it's going to be a little bit of a mess. And then like you said, you throw India back into this. Who he got playing time. There's a lot of nasty stuff there, kind of towards the end. Luckily, with the McLean injury, he should be good to go, but there's just a lot of fluidity.
I think you're right about Strand. The reason that I'm going to agree with you on Strand is not that I think his hitting has been okay. I mean, 91 WRC plus for Encarnacion Strand, but I think one thing that impressed me was when he was here in town in San Francisco was that his defense is not good.
No,
even at first.
It's not great.
So basically what I'm saying is you play Joey Votto at first and Encarnacion Strand as a DH. And once you have Encarnacion and Strand at DH, then anytime you want to fit Renfroe in the lineup and Benson, or somebody's knee hurts or something, they get DH and Encarnacion Strand sits. So I agree with you. I think Encarnacion Strand and Renfroe are hurt the most by these activations.
Yeah, Strand maybe becomes just like a pinch hitter as well. Is there anything like preemptively stash on Conforto right now for your last couple weeks? You said he's coming back.
I don't know. I mean, I just wanted to wonder out loud, like, what his career looks like from here on out. And, how much is the park and how much is, because it is the worst barrel rate of his career, the worst max EV, coming off a shoulder injury. He's 30 years old. Do you give him like, okay, well, this was the year where he comes back and the next year he's fully healthy. He gets the normal off season and then he gets back to, maybe 2019 levels where, he's a 25 to 30 homer hitter. Depending on what the ball is,
becomes like Adam Duvall. He just becomes Adam Duvall again or something like that. Like I
mean, he's always had better He always had play discipline and K percentages. So it would be Adam Duvall with a better OBP. So
yeah, I guess the good, like when Adam Duvall's like good, not the bad version of him, which he shows off. I don't know. I'm probably going to be less interested in Conforto. Probably about situation on like what are we in? What's around him? Are we going to get into platoony type?
No, he's coming back because I don't think he gets more than $18 million on the open market after this year, right?
No chance. There's no way.
I think he takes that 18 million and comes back, right?
Is it a player option?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He probably already has a certified letter in the mailbox. It's like, I'm going to option it 100,000%. But then what does that look like on the outfield? I know Estrada was playing more outfield. You've got to have room for Matos. You got your Yastrzemski. I mean, like, I don't know what that looks like. Maybe you just DH him and he's just committed DH, which might be a better spot.
I bet you they don't sign Jock Peterson back. They brought Jock Peterson back for the qualifying offer. So they paid $20 million for Jock Peterson this year, and they're going to get one win in terms of wins over replacement and a DH that's 16% better than league average, like Jock has been, is not. It's just not worth $20 million, So maybe they re-sign Jock on a one-year deal or something. But I think if they look and they say, well, we're stuck on Conforto, let's not sign Jock Peterson and get some flexibility back so that we can put Conforto in there the days that we want to play everybody else. Because Mitch Haniger's under contract for next season. Yes, Stremski's got one more year, although I do think that near the end of his arbitration, at some point they will consider DFAing him, because a 2-win player, which kind of seems like Yastrzemski has settled in at, is sometimes replaceable. Like, don't you think Matos could be a 2-win player if you just gave him every day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's just shown that up defensively and everything. I was hoping in some sadistic world they get rid of Jock Peterson and replace him with Tommy Pham in the offseason, free agency. But that's just the sadistic part of my mind of
just I would love it.
Irony.
I would love it. I love Tommy Pham.
I know, it's your boy. That's your boy.
But it would be pretty hilarious to replace Jock Peterson.
That's only I'm just going for the cheap joke more than anything else.
Yeah. Well, so I think Conforto's got a job. I think it'll be most of the time. I do like that he's gotten back to the contact is good, the walk rate is good, but the batted ball quality is not good enough for me to think he's anything other than a short-term replacement throughout the rest of this year. I wanted to mention him also because the schedule favors the iffy Giants. They hit Colorado at the end of the week, and there are on waiver wires everywhere Mitch Haniger, Michael Conforto, and JD Davis. Just pick one of them. I don't even know. Maybe look at the matchups, but there's 3 guys, 2 of them are righties. They're going into Coors Field. Just pick one of them up. I think, they're all looking decent in terms of health and playing okay. So yeah, I wanted to mention that.
I looked at Fantasy Pros has like a matchup grid, and they gave them the number 2 matchup this week of any team, 7 games, 2 against lefties, 5 against righties. And as you mentioned, they end the week Colorado, and they start off Cleveland. So it's a pretty good matchup set here. Let's talk about some pitching. DVR would be just so disappointed in us if we didn't talk about this. He probably would have led the show with this, but we got to talk about what happened with Milwaukee yesterday. It was such a weird scene. Corbin Burns pitched 8 hitless innings, then gets replaced by Devin Williams, who pitches a perfect ninth. No hits. The Yankees then, they had, I'm just reading, this was like from the article. Abner Uribe comes in, Volpe hit a line drive. Frelick
I was watching this catch.
Exactly.
My kids are like, "There's never been a no hitter into the 11th," and I was like, "Well, now there won't be."
yeah, because they were 2 outs away from the first ever 11 inning no hitter in Major League history. Yeah. Oswaldo Cabrera ended up breaking that up in that game. Just taking a look over at, I hit all my different sheets there, almost closed everything. Corbin Burns, velo was interesting. The curveball was up. The slider and cutter were both down. The slider was down by 1.5 miles on average. His cutter was the dominant pitch. Threw it 61% of the time, had 8 whiffs, but only a 21% swing and whiff rate. Totality was 29% swing and whiff, 28 CSW. Feels like some pretty low CSW and swing and whiff numbers for a guy that went 8 hitless. But just your thoughts on that performance from Corbin Burns.
It was amazing. I think, honestly, Cole went toe to toe with him. Did give up a run and some hits, but I thought that was a great pitching matchup. It was really enjoyable to watch. It was a crazy game with Sal Frelick and Joey Wiemer knocking each other out to get that last ball in the 10th. Joey Wiemer comes off with a bloody mouth. It was a really fun game to watch. I almost felt like the runner on 10th robbed us of the chance to have a no-hitter in the 11th. I mean, it was just, yes, Oswaldo got a hit, and that would have been the no-hitter would have been gone, but there's just something about, you have a guy on second, you pitch differently. That's the whole point of it. But I just wonder if he'd gotten an empty inning to start with, if that wouldn't have been a no-hitter. So that was just a random thought. I thought the Yankees looked dead in the water at different times in this game. And they were even talking about how quiet it was, and it felt like a spring training game, they were saying. And then it gets the heroes of the game are Oswaldo Cabrera and Kyle Higgy-Yoshioka. So it's not the best of times in New York. but it is interesting to see these young, like some of the young guys pull through.
Cole Reagans, who's been the talk of everything. Cole Reagans had a weird game because he had these 3 just atrocious balls. He ended up striking out 6. He walked 6, went 5 2/3, but only gave up 1 hit. He's insane, but he had these 3 wild pitches that went like consecutive. His velo up across the board. I mean, 4-seam is still, a 1.5 miles over what the season average is, even after this little set of insane starts. 33% swing and whiff rate, double digits on any pitch he threw, 10% or more. CSW was down a little bit, but the changeup was effective. His slider was the best. It had the most swing and whiffs. It had 6 for 55% whiff rate on it. But this was the first like non superhuman performance by Cole Reagans. So a lot of walks. Is there anything you're taking out of this from him? Any concerns off of the struggles? Or, he walked 6, but he did give up only 1 hit. He kind of popped back through. So thoughts on Cole Reagans?
I'm still totally in. Yes, he had a 93 location plus for that game. It's not like the number is going to be like, yes, but he actually located the ball really well. I mean, no, some of those went like into the stands. So the location plus on that is not good. But for the season, he still has a 101 location plus. And then if you look back at his minor league numbers, like very early on, he had some higher walk rates. But ever since he's hit Double-A, his first taste of Double-A, 36 innings, 12% walk rate. Then like in Triple-A this year when he's learning a new pitch, I mean, he's learning a slider for the first time. He had a higher walk rate. I would think that the walk rate he has right now is just basically what he's going to have, 9 to 10%. It's not like he's going to be a guy that leads the league in command and has tiny walk rates. That's not him. He does spray it around some, but if he's throwing 97, 98, 99, then it's going to work still. It's not the kind of command where you say Edward Cabrera, for example, was running 15, 16, 17s, 18s walk rates in percentages in the minors. That's a command you have to worry about.
Have you settled on what the value is going to be next year in your mind? Like what redraft SP rank he's gonna hold in your mind? Are you settled on that? Like top 30, top 40?
It's hard to like do it without actually doing it. But
yeah,
I like just off the top of my head, it seems like it's got to be top 50. I think it'll be closer to top 40. I mean, you think you would put him in where'd you put a Joe Ryan last year? Like going into this year, Cole Reagans is similar, right?
Yeah.
Pop up guy that's showing you everything you want to see,
but even
great
better
strikeout rates, huh?
But Reagan's even better, I would say, at this point.
Right.
And I agree with you. I think he's somewhere between 30 and 40. I think some people might pop him top 25 just based off of it. I think it's a little too risky. And maybe actually, to be honest
with you,
this is
a guy with 2 Tommy Johns too. So it's not like you can give him the full bill of health.
Yeah, and I don't want him to struggle for anybody's playoffs, but like it wouldn't hurt for him to have a little bit down performance here or there to bring that value back. Just
a couple more pitches into the stands, dude.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to skip past. Well, I just want to mention Pablo Lopez went 8, struck out 14. He's just been bonkers from like a strikeout perspective. 45% swing and whiff rate, 40% CSW.
Sweeper's been a big addition for him.
Yeah, 40% swing and whiff rate on the fastball, sweeper, and changeup in that game, which is really awesome. But I really wanted to get your take because I don't want to time ourselves out. Keaton Wynn went 6, struck out 9. He had 22 swinging strikes on just 80 pitches. 18 came from the splitter, and he had a CSW of 48%. So Giants being Giants, talk to us about Keaton Wynn.
This dude is crazy, man. What is last time I checked, he was throwing like 60, he's 56% split fingers. What?
Crazy.
It's nuts. Like it's so nuts. Me and my kids were talking about it. Like it is nuts. But if you think about it, there might be something going on in San Francisco. Kevin Gossman, Alex Cobb, Keaton Wynn, these are guys that throw the most percentage-wise split fingers in the big leagues, I think. So interesting that they seem to, I've identified that if you can command the split finger a little bit, you can just keep throwing it. although Keaton Wynn has been injured this year. And I would also say that 56% is higher than what Cobb and, and Gossman are running out there.
Yeah, is
So
it sustainable? Can you throw it 50% of the time and be a starter?
it seems impossible to me, dude. Like it just seems like I would say no.
Like, would you put him back out? I mean, it looks like, oh man, he might have his next start at Colorado. Let me look at the color. I think that's where he would line up. Yeah, there's a to be determined San Francisco starter on Friday, and that would probably line up to win. So at Colorado,
what would be the next one after that?
I'd have to go. I only have the week in front. Let me see if I can push it. Here, I can push it up here. The week after that would be, looks like, oh, it didn't adjust. Oh, I didn't adjust. Oh, here we go.
When did he pitch last?
I think he just pitched on Saturday or Sunday. Yeah, exactly.
No, last night. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Friday at the Rockies. 1, 2, 3, 4.
We go back to the
Dodgers.
Oh, is it?
LA. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Padres at home.
No. Oh yeah, I was looking at the wrong way. Yeah. No thanks.
If he gets the Padres at home September 26th, if you're still looking for a streamer, maybe, but I don't want those next ones.
I don't want to touch that. Yeah, I'm looking here because this one coming up. Yeah, no. That's going to be a pass. Trying to see how excited we could be about him. The splitter usage is crazy. I think we both agree that the sustainability of that is probably not there. Anything also on John Means? John Means is about to make his return on Tuesday. I tend to shy away from guys coming off of injury. I think this is a no-go for me. Are you willing to put John Means out there?
No, I don't think so. One thing that is interesting to me is that there are studies out there that say the command is the first thing to go. Like it doesn't come back right away. The first year after Tommy John surgery, and we are talking with somebody that command is a big part of what he does. So I'd be a little bit nervous about that home run rate coming back if the command's not fully there. And then it's a little uncouth, but I just not 100% sure what his breaking ball looks like in the post-enforcement environment. And so I want to see how he can spin it because he is a little bit like a Marco Estrada in that he has a decent fastball and a good straight change. But Marco Estrada was always pretty much as good as whatever third pitch he was fooling around with at the time. When his cutter was good or when his breaking ball was good or whatever, that's when Estrada was better. And I think just like any other pitch that needs a changeup, he needs a breaking ball. And so I would much rather watch him from the bench. There's also some news out of the Dodgers camp that they were surprised by Kershaw's worst ever fastball velo in that start, and they're going to basically skip his next start, which I thought
they're pushing him to Friday. Gavin Stone looks like he's going to pitch here on Monday, and they're pushing Kershaw to Friday is the current word.
Yeah, and I thought he was going to get one of those Nationals games. So I think they already pushed him a little bit to get him to that Padres game, and then they're going to push him. What is it? What is the start he gets then?
He gets
Mariners.
So
is that right?
Yeah. Let's see. Dodgers.
If he pushes him to Friday, it's Mariners.
It is Mariners. Kirby. It looks like he'd be toe to toe with Kirby, who doesn't want to go 90. I okay. You don't have to go 90 if you don't want, man. I'm not telling you what to do.
Listen, I've talked to him a lot, and I have a little bit slightly different read. He's smart like an analyst.
Totally.
I think he was analyzing the situation. I think
he was mad. I think he was mad, by the way. Like I love Kirby. I don't hate on it. I'm just joking. Like I think he was frustrated, and out of frustration you say stupid stuff. And I totally agree. You take a frustrated, smart person who's analyzing the game, and he's saying something that
I should have been taken out. Yeah. And it comes out as sounding like I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
which I'm not. I think those are not the same things. And maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I know him. He is a bulldog. Like I don't like it. I don't really get. He's not the kind of guy. I don't get this reading that everyone's like, oh, he's soft and George Kirby, because what just fully he said something like, you know, I was at 90 pitches and I shouldn't have been out there or something, you know, and everyone was like, oh, how can you want to be out of the game? We're all competitors, blah 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 blah. And Roger Clemens is out here blasting him, and Houston Street is blasting him, and like everyone's
I
on
didn't
his
see
case.
Houston Street,
and I'm like, dudes, like he is a bulldog. Like he wants to be really, really good, and he cares a lot, and he thinks about this craft, and he works hard. So I don't get that. I think I get this analytical thing where I think he was saying, like, given that I had thrown 90 pitches, I probably wasn't the best option, you know, and I was frustrating to me to be left out there when analytically I can tell that, like, maybe that wasn't the best, you know.
And you ask him when you're frustrated and what happens. Like, I say stupid stuff when I'm frustrated, and he was frustrated, and that's how that's what his stupid came out, was sounding like he didn't want to be there, which he is one of the Mariners have some insanely competitive pitchers, so not to pick on him. By the way, the last thing I want to end with is just a couple things I just saw come down. The Orioles confirmed that Felix Bautista has a partially torn UCL, but they are saying they're still open to him returning this year. So
he might pitch through it.
Yeah, he might pitch through it. Chris Bryant is coming off the IL on Monday.
And nobody cares.
Nobody. I mean, it's exactly what I was going to say. To silence, and good for him. Hopefully he returns. But
I don't think he got FAA beat in any of my 15-team leagues, which is amazing because they're home all week. In fact, that probably is a missed chance for some.
I just don't.
I got Hunter Goodman. We bought Hunter Goodman in my main because he's home for 7 days. I would hate if I'd be mad if Chris Bryant takes first base at bats away from Hunter Goodman.
Ooh, I bet he does. That's going to be stupid. And then
that's going to be stupid. Well,
that is going to be
so much. Speaking of stupid, is that contract?
It's going to be one of the worst. And then the Brewers selected Josh Donaldson, so I'm sure that'll go over well in the clubhouse. So Brewers are bringing up Josh Donaldson.
I wonder what DVR is thinking about that. We made a joke about Josh Donaldson going to the Brewers. I think it was a joke, and now it's reality. Ooh.
And now
so is he going to start over Monasterio? And Monasterio is going to start over Turang, because Turang's mostly about defense.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm sure it's going to be great. It's be a great clubhouse move for everybody. It'll be all positive and all sunshines and rainbows. So those are a couple pickups there as we are shipping you off into the week with our takes and analysis. Follow Eno on Twitter at Eno Saris. You can follow me at IsItTheWelsh, and go over to theathletic.com/rates and barrels. Sign up today. Be on the lookout for Eno's got that Corbin Carroll article coming in the future. And there's just a bunch of awesome stuff that you guys should be locked into. Make sure you are subscribed to Rates and Barrels, because you don't want to miss any of it. Just because we tell you things are going down, you don't know when it's going to change. There might be secret special episodes that pop up. So don't miss any of it. Make sure you're subscribed. That's it. That's all we got. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you next time right here on Rates and Barrels.
Thanks for listening.